I still remember the way the teller laughed. Not loudly. Not enough to get in trouble. Just enough for everyone standing in line to hear. The deposit slip in my hand was for $11. $11. That was all I had left after paying for diesel, feed, and repairing a broken irrigation pump that had decided to quit during the hottest week of the summer. The woman behind the counter glanced at the slip and smirked. "Busy day on the farm?" she asked. A couple of customers chuckled. I smiled politely. When you've spent 40 years farming, you learn that pride doesn't pay bills. My name is Thomas Walker. I was 63 years old at the time, and my family had farmed the same stretch of land outside Cedar Creek for 3 generations. The farm wasn't large. It wasn't fancy. But it was ours. Or at least I thought it would stay ours. I had no idea that within 6 months, the largest bank in the county would try to push me off that land. And I definitely had no idea that a dusty map forgotten since 1969 would become the weapon that stopped them cold. The trouble started when the bank announced plans for a massive commercial development. They wanted offices, retail stores, parking structures, and a new regional headquarters. Local officials loved the idea. The newspapers called it economic progress. Investors called it a gold mine. The bank called it the future. There was only one problem. My farm sat directly beside the property they had purchased. At first, they acted friendly. Representatives came to my house offering money. Then they offered more money. Then even more. Every time I declined. The land wasn't just dirt. My father was buried there. My grandfather had cleared those fields with horses. Every fence post held a memory. No amount of money could replace that. The bank executives stopped smiling after that. A month later, strange things began happening. Survey crews appeared near my property line. Construction vehicles blocked access roads. County inspectors suddenly became interested in every tiny detail of my operation. One week they claimed my equipment storage violated a regulation. The next week they questioned drainage permits that had been approved years earlier. The pressure was obvious. They wanted me frustrated enough to sell. Instead, I kept farming. Then came the meeting that changed everything. A bank attorney invited me downtown. The room was filled with lawyers, planners, and executives. One of them slid a folder across the table. Inside was a final purchase offer. It was substantial. Far more money than my farm was worth on paper. When I refused, the atmosphere changed instantly. The attorney leaned forward. "You should understand that development is moving forward with or without your cooperation." The message was clear. Sell now. Or regret it later. I stood up and left. 3 weeks later, construction officially began. Huge equipment rolled onto neighboring land. Trees disappeared. Fields were leveled. The project moved fast. But then something strange happened. Workers suddenly stopped showing up. Excavators sat idle. Engineers held emergency meetings. Nobody explained why. A week passed. Then another. Construction remained frozen. Curious, I started asking questions. Nobody had answers. At least not publicly. Then one evening an old friend named Harold knocked on my door. Harold had spent decades working as a county surveyor before retiring. He carried a cardboard tube under one arm. "You need to see this," he said. We spread several documents across my kitchen table. Most were old surveys. Property records. Engineering notes. Then Harold carefully unrolled a yellowed map. The paper looked ancient. The date stamped in the corner read. "What am I looking at?" I asked. Harold pointed toward a blue line crossing several properties. "Including mine. Including the bank's development site. This," he said, "is the original water rights corridor." I frowned. The term sounded familiar. My grandfather had mentioned it years ago. Something about water access agreements dating back decades. Harold nodded. Most people forgot it existed. Then he smiled. The bank certainly did. Over the next several days we dug through county archives. What we discovered shocked everyone. Back in the 1960s, farmers throughout the valley had established a legally protected water distribution network. The agreements guaranteed access to underground water infrastructure. Those rights weren't temporary. They were permanent. And according to the documents, a major portion of the bank's billion-dollar project sat directly on top of protected water access routes. Routes they legally could not obstruct. Routes they had already begun building over. The implications were enormous. If the records were valid, nearly the entire development plan violated existing water rights protections. The bank's lawyers immediately challenged the findings. They claimed the records were outdated. They argued the agreements no longer applied. But county officials couldn't ignore the evidence. State regulators became involved. Independent experts reviewed the documents. Every review reached the same conclusion. The 1969 agreements remained legally enforceable. Construction was halted pending investigation. Investors panicked. Contractors demanded answers. Local newspapers suddenly shifted tone. The project once praised as unstoppable was now facing disaster. Then came the public hearing. The room was packed. Bank executives sat on one side. Farmers and residents filled the other. Experts presented maps, survey data, historical records, water system diagrams. Hour after hour, evidence piled up. Finally, one regulator displayed the original 1969 map on a large screen. The room went silent. The protected corridor cut directly through the center of the proposed expansion. There was no way around it. No loophole. No technicality. The project had been designed on land the bank never fully investigated. One missing historical document had changed everything. Weeks later, the ruling became official. The expansion could not proceed under its current design. Major portions would need complete redesign. Costs exploded. Timelines collapsed. Several investors withdrew. The project that executives had spent years promoting was effectively crippled. And the pressure campaign against local farmers stopped overnight. Funny how quickly powerful people become polite when they realize they aren't holding all the cards. A few months after the ruling, I walked into that same bank again. This time I wasn't depositing $11. Harvest season had been good. Water access remained secure. The farm was thriving. The teller looked different. But the branch manager recognized me immediately. He greeted me with a smile that felt considerably more respectful than before. I smiled back. No anger. No revenge. Just satisfaction. Because the real victory wasn't about money. It wasn't about embarrassing a bank. It was about proving something my grandfather used to say. Never underestimate old records. Most people think power belongs to whoever has the most money. Sometimes it does. But sometimes power belongs to the person willing to dig through dusty boxes, read forgotten documents, and uncover truths everyone else ignored. The bank had millions of dollars. Teams of lawyers. Engineers. Consultants. Yet all of them missed a single map from 1969. A map that had been sitting quietly in county archives for decades. And in the end, that forgotten piece of paper protected an entire farming community. Including mine. As for the $11 deposit, I still keep that receipt. Not because of the money. But because it reminds me of something important. The day people laughed at a farmer was the same day they underestimated him. And that turned out to be the most expensive mistake they ever